Imagine for a second that your phone isn't a communication device, but a high-stakes bomb. And every time it buzzes with a notification from a dating app, the timer inches closer to zero. For a lot of people, that little ping isn't a hit of dopamine. It's a surge of pure, unadulterated cortisol. You aren't excited about the prospect of a new connection. You're looking for a reason to delete the app, throw your phone into a lake, and retreat into the sanctuary of your living room, where the only thing that can judge you is your cat and the algorithm of your Netflix homepage. We live in a world that treats dating like a gamified sport, a buffet of endless options where you're just one swipe away from the one. Yet more of us than ever are standing at the edge of the pool, absolutely paralyzed by the thought of getting our hair wet. It's not that you're picky, and it's not that you're broken. It's that your brain's internal firewall has flagged the entire concept of dating as a high-level security threat. Before we peel back the layers of this psychological bunker you've built, I have a question that might sting a bit. Are you actually single because you value your independence? Or are you just terrified that if someone finally saw the real, unedited version of you, they'd realize you're just as lost as everyone else? Tell me your honest thoughts on that in the comments. I genuinely read and reply to all of them because this community's vulnerability is what keeps these deep dives going. And hey, if you feel like your firewall is being called out right now, hitting that like button makes my day and puts a massive smile on my face. It lets me know this message is hitting home for the right people. To understand the deep psychology of dating fear, we have to look at the source code of your attachment style. As Carl Jung once brilliantly put it, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. That transformation is exactly what terrifies the avoidant heart. For someone who is afraid of dating, intimacy isn't seen as a connection. It's seen as a hostile takeover. You've spent years building a sovereign kingdom of one. You have your routines, your space, and your carefully curated identity. Inviting a stranger into that space is like letting a toddler loose in a glass museum. You just know something priceless is going to get smashed. This is often rooted in what psychologists call avoidant attachment. If your early experiences taught you that people are inconsistent, suffocating, or likely to leave when things get real, your brain developed a survival script that says, safety equals solitude. You've convinced yourself that you don't need anyone. But that's often just a sophisticated lie you tell yourself to avoid the chemical reaction that Jung talked about. Because if you don't react, you can't be transformed. And if you aren't transformed, you can't be hurt. There is a certain irony in the way we use modern technology to avoid the very thing it's supposed to facilitate. Dating apps are the ultimate psychological playground for the fearful. They give us the illusion of action without any of the risk. You can match, you can chat, and you can engage in the soft launch of a relationship, the talking stage, which is essentially the purgatory of modern romance. The talking stage is where dating fear goes to thrive. It's a space where you can be available without being vulnerable. You can trade witty banter and curated selfies, but the moment the conversation shifts toward a real date, an actual physical meeting where your microexpressions and nervous stutters can't be edited out, the fear kicks in. You start looking for the ick. You know the ick. That sudden, inexplicable surge of disgust you feel towards someone because of the way they chewed their salad, or the fact that they used a specific emoji. In reality, the ick is rarely about them. It's a psychological emergency brake. Your brain detects a threat of real intimacy, so it manufactures a reason to disqualify the person. It's a self-sabotage mechanism disguised as high standards. You aren't finding flaws, you are searching for exits. Let's talk about the choice paradox. We are told that having more options makes us happier, but in the dating world, it just makes us more anxious. When you have a literal catalog of thousands of people in your pocket, the stakes of picking one feel impossibly high. What if you commit to person A, but person B was just 3 more swipes away, and they like the same obscure 90s shoegaze bands as you? This creates a state of analysis paralysis. Instead of building a connection, you are constantly auditing potential partners. You're looking for a reason to fail them so you can return to the safety of the search. The search is safe because the search is a fantasy. A real person is a liability. A digital profile is a possibility. For the fearful, the possibility is always more attractive than the reality, because the possibility doesn't have the power to break your heart. You've turned dating into a spreadsheet, and as we know, nobody ever fell in love with a spreadsheet. It's a way of intellectualizing a process that is supposed to be emotional, which is a classic defense mechanism. If you can keep it in your head, it can't touch your heart. Then there is the fear of being seen. True intimacy requires a level of transparency that feels like walking through a mall completely naked. We all have a persona, the mask we wear to satisfy the tribe, to look competent at work, and to appear cool on social media. But dating eventually requires you to take off the mask. It requires you to admit that you have anxieties, that you're sometimes insecure, and that you don't actually have your life as together as your LinkedIn profile suggests. For someone with fearful avoidant tendencies, this transparency feels like a death sentence. You are terrified that once the mystery is gone, you will be found lacking. You've convinced yourself that your infrastructure, your usefulness, your achievements, your wit, is the only reason people like you. So, the thought of someone seeing the worthless parts of you, the parts that just want to be held and told everything is going to be okay, is terrifying. You'd rather stay a mystery than risk being a disappointment. It's much easier to be the person who never dates than the person who dated and wasn't enough. We also have to consider the sovereignty trap. We live in an era that worships hyper-independence. We are told to choose ourselves, to be our own soulmate, and to never settle. While this is great for self-esteem, it can become a prison for the fearful. You start to view a partner not as a companion, but as a parasite on your time and energy. You think about the cost of dating, the loss of your Tuesday night gaming sessions, the compromise on where to eat dinner, the emotional labor of managing someone else's moods. Your brain performs a cost-benefit analysis where the benefit, love, companionship, growth, is treated as a variable, but the cost, loss of autonomy, is treated as a fixed, terrifying certainty. This is the availability paradox applied to the heart. You've become so useful to yourself, so self-sufficient, that you've made a partner worthless in your internal economy. But here's the sarcasm of the soul. The more you protect your autonomy, the more you starve your spirit. We are social animals. We aren't meant to be sovereign in a vacuum. A king with no kingdom is just a lonely man in a fancy hat, and a heart with no connection is just a pump keeping a ghost alive. Past trauma, of course, plays the role of the lead architect in this bunker. If you've been through a devastating breakup or grew up in a household where love was a battlefield, your nervous system is essentially stuck in combat mode. Every romantic overture feels like a scout for an invading army. You aren't afraid of dating. You are experiencing a post-traumatic stress response to the idea of trust. Your brain is trying to protect you from a pain it remembers all too well. It's like a dog that's been kicked. It's not that the dog doesn't want a treat, it's that it can't see the hand without seeing the potential for a blow. This is where shadow work becomes essential. You have to go back and talk to that younger version of yourself, the one who learned that love equals pain, and explain that the war is over. You are the director of your own movie now, not an extra in someone else's tragedy. But that transition is uncomfortable. It requires you to sit in the fire of your own vulnerability and resist the urge to run back to the cold, safe basement of your isolation. There is also a social simulation aspect to this fear. We are bombarded with relationship goals that are essentially high-budget commercials for a product that doesn't exist. We see the curated highlights of other people's lives and compare them to our internal blooper reel. This creates a sense of performance anxiety. You feel like you have to be on all the time, the best version of yourself, the most interesting, the most stable. It's exhausting. The fear of dating is often just a fear of the effort of dating. We are already thermal throttling our energy just to survive the 21st century. The thought of adding a whole other person's expectations to our hardware feels like it will cause a total system crash. We've been programmed to believe that dating should be effortless if it's right, which is one of the most destructive lies ever told. Real connection is messy. It's awkward. It involves bad breath, misunderstandings, and the occasional seen message that goes unanswered for 6 hours. If you're waiting for a version of dating that doesn't require you to leak energy, you'll be waiting forever. The sarcasm of the modern dating world is that everyone is pretending to care less than they actually do. We are in a coolness arms race, where the person who displays the least emotion wins. If you're afraid of dating, you're probably an expert at this. You ghost before you can be ghosted. You keep your replies brief. You never ask the heavy questions. You are winning the game of not giving a fuck. But the prize for that game is a very quiet, very empty house. Reclaiming your ability to date is about choosing to lose the game. It's about being the one who cares more. It's about admitting that you want to be seen, even if it's terrifying. It's about realizing that sovereignty doesn't mean isolation. It means having the power to choose who you share your kingdom with. You don't have to open the gates for everyone, but you have to stop pretending the gates are rusted shut. If you're stuck in this cycle, the first step isn't a big move. It's a silent experiment, much like we talked about with the availability paradox. Next time you feel that surge of fear or that impulse to find the ick, don't act on it immediately. Just sit with the discomfort. Watch your brain try to manufacture an exit strategy. Recognize it for what it is, a survival script that is no longer serving you. You aren't that kicked dog anymore. You're the person holding the leash. You can choose to walk toward the connection, even if your legs are shaking. The world won't fall apart if you go on a bad date. In fact, a bad date is just a story. It's data for your system scan. The only real tragedy is the date that never happened because you were too busy guarding a treasure that no one was allowed to see. I want to know about the exit strategy your brain usually uses. Do you find the ick? Do you suddenly get too busy at work? Or do you just delete the apps and tell yourself you're focusing on your career? Share your stories in the comments. We're building a library of these psychological glitches so we can all start to see the code for what it is. And remember, hitting that like button tells the algorithm that this community of glitch hunters is growing, and it really does put a big smile on my face. You are not a service, you are not a project, and you are definitely not undateable. You are a sovereign being who has been running an outdated security protocol. It's time for an update. Intimacy is the ultimate hack for a life that feels like it's just going through the motions. It's the chemical reaction that makes the whole simulation worth it. Stop being the extra in your own life. Start directing the scenes, even the awkward ones. The tribe can wait, your heart can't. I'll see you in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one, where we'll keep digging until we find the truth behind the mask.